Or we can just email it to you.
Yes, I'll take the e-receipt and add these two for you.
Thanks.
Ask your local stores to go paperless. Visit bpafree.me to learn more and take action.
You'd think someone would just make a BPA-free receipt.
They do, but most BPA-free receipts have chemical.
Welcome to Happiness in the City. This is Barbara, and today I'd like to focus our attention on a very important way, and that is the way to think about the concept of the way. I would like first to look at the dictionary definitions, and as you have noticed, I've been doing a lot of talks about the meaning of words, because we have been using words assuming that other people think about the content of the words we use in the same way, but sometimes there needs to be clarification, because in order to have good social communication, we have to have understanding of the content of commonly used words, and we don't really have that. People use the word democracy, for instance, assuming that it has the same meaning for everybody who uses that word. But in fact, when you start analyzing different contexts in which that word is used, it has different content in different countries, and we need to have that clarification in our thinking, because that allows us to engage in conversations and discussions, and at the highest level we can develop the art of rhetorics, which means the art to persuade other people, the audience, about our point of view, and then also allow them to try to convince us about their points of view, and that's how we have conversation. I've gone through many situations in which I was persuaded to change my mind on certain things, or to be very determined to continue believing in things that I thought were right, and that would give me strength to persuade others to that point of view. But it has always been a conversation within my life, within the group of friends that I have. And the reason that I've been very open-minded to learn new things, but also firm to uphold things I believe are true and worth continuation, is because I got very old-fashioned education in my family. And frankly, that education was that I have to allow Spirit of God within me to be my teacher. And then He shows the discerning ways. And this is something that I encourage all of you to search. You cannot command and order this from God, but you can pray to God that you receive it. And I received it because I come from a long line of Christian families, and this simply has been the nature of life in my families. Basically what that meant is that children were pretty much left in the care of the Spirit. The adults would just provide for what needed to be supplied for physical well-being, like housing, food, clothing, cleanliness, education, and schools. But we were all left as children to be guided by the Spirit of God. So I grew up in the spirit of liberty that comes with it from as long as I remember, as a little girl. All people in my family grew up with this guidance. What this means is it creates necessity to communicate, because what Spirit is teaching me may be different than what Spirit is teaching my brother or other people. Like in my case, Spirit of God guided me very profoundly and firmly in the direction of electronics. My brother was directed in the development of image and art. Other people in my family were directed in completely different ways, and that is what true diversity is. In other words, true diversity doesn't come from some law or command. It comes from liberty that we, within us, within our lives, have freedom to listen to the Spirit of God's teachings and to be guided in a unique way. So this is the foundation of my interest in the concept of the way. This concept is used in many religions. Biblical ways are called God's way. Tao in China is the concept of the way. Buddhists have the concept of the way. I'm not an expert in those things, so I only acknowledge that they exist. In other words, there's something within universal nature of our relationship between our lives and Creator that brings a natural understanding of the need to understand the ways, the methods. Let's look at the dictionary definition from one of my favorite dictionaries. And I encourage you to study dictionaries. It's something that I used to do a lot when I was studying linguistics at the University of Warsaw. I virtually never parted with my dictionaries, because that is what develops logos, it develops our reason, our language, communication, and great connection to the heritage of the language that we have from thousands of years. We cannot talk to our ancestors from 2,000 years ago, but we have that heritage of language within us, which we can access through that amazing legacy that former generations left for us. And there is no faster way than language. We can read poems from hundreds of years ago. We read the Bible that was written over thousands of years. So this is really exciting and awesome. And the best way, again, to do it is by receiving Holy Spirit of God that would teach each of you individually the way of the language and the way of what you need to know. So that eventually brings ultimate peace, because the Spirit within us reconciles with His own presence in all creatures. I've been living it. There were times that was suppressed in me, blocked. I couldn't really communicate with others on many matters, but the Spirit always is within me and always showing me new ways. And within my specialty, it's way of electronics. So we have internet now, and I get that knowledge directly from God. I don't get it from other people. But then, how God teaches this to other people is really amazing. So, let's look at the definition here. Definition of way. The first definition is very geographic. A thoroughfare for travel or transportation from place to place. So this is an obvious definition that teaches us the need to have ways in order to apply transportation on the ways and reach destination from place A to place B. Another one in this definition is an opening for passage. This door is the only way out of the room. So here it's about containers and receptions and exits. So we have networks of physical roads, and we have also ways to control those roads, and those are called borders. So this is one of this fascinating presence of ways, and of course ways are everywhere, all over the world, in every country. And since we are created, we know that we have to respect those ways, or we won't get from destination A to destination B. Can you imagine if there was total chaos in this area? Then we couldn't have trains and cars predictably driving from one place to another. So you see how the creation of ways is part of nature of human life. When we are born, one of the first things we are taught is how to move in a predictable and orderly way. So this is essential for health and peace. And the second part of this definition is about entering and leaving. So places that have doors through which we can enter and then leave. Another aspect of need for well-ordered communities, countries, cities, we have to have that predictability, because if there is chaos in this area, all kinds of strange things start happening, and one of the most fundamental is lack of security and safety. And of course, then another one definition here is the second part, the course traveled from one place to another route. And then the sentence is, I asked the way to the museum. So this is about directions, the way and directions. And what is very important for us to understand is we need a sense of direction, not only within our individual destiny, but also within destinies of our cities and countries and the world. There is need for us to think in terms of good direction or bad direction, and we need to develop a sense of virtue of what good direction is. Currently, there is really no good sense of the right direction. The only place where we have serious understanding of direction is actually financial markets. Financial markets understand the significance and power of the right ways, and there is a lot of effort to create good communication around finances and to create good sense of predictability or knowledge of how things can develop. The legal systems in many countries don't have that. And that is one of the big problems today. There's lots of laws being created that alter directions from legacies of certain countries in wrong ways. And that creates a lot of chaos, because if something was legal, let's suppose in the 60s or 70s, and today some laws come in and punish people for what they thought was legal in the 60s and 70s, that creates chaos and creates a sense of forcing direction back to the past instead of developing laws that would continue predictability and good sense of order. So that is actually the main reason there is so much suffering, pain and suffering in the world. And somehow people take it to granted. They say, oh, we have to obey the law. Of course we do. But the law also has to obey the laws of the right legal thinking and the right legal direction. In other words, the law cannot just be created because someone feels like writing a letter that would alter the direction and the way of the whole country. And I think that this is weakness, and this is the problem that I think at this point affects almost all courts of the world, that this is the crisis. It's similar to the crisis of fear of not having exit from certain situations. People think that creating a new law creates exits, but sometimes it also destroys buildings and destroys human relationships and trust and good communication. So we have to look at the creation of wise legal systems, and I think that that is something that Holy Spirit within us can teach us how to do it right. I remember the ancient ways of legal systems were always connected to royal courts, and the king was responsible to God himself for basic things, providing housing to everybody in the realm, housing opportunities, providing life sustenance so that the earth doesn't cry with innocent blood being spilled or starved, and for access to worship centers. Those were basic functions of the royal court. And then some countries got rid of it, and that created chaos because legal systems started ignoring needs of housing or ignoring needs of food supplies or just general happiness of the nation. And traditional duty of the king and ways of the king was to receive power in his heart. And sometimes the king was a woman in Poland. There were situations that Queen Jadwiga was a very important queen, but she was called Rex King, and that tradition comes from ancient thinking that king can be a woman or a man, because king represents kingship of God. And one of the fundamental needs was to create connection of authority and happiness and provide happiness to the people. So the feeling of happiness, the feeling of well-being, predictability was one of the foundational ways in which people were encouraged to be appreciative of life and happy. Another definition that I'd like to talk about is the way is also a course, such as a series of actions or sequence of events leading in a direction or towards an objective. So it can be a course of action or an opportunity, capability, or fact of doing as one pleases. So another meaning of way is the course of action. And that involves a lot of planning, a lot of thinking, foresight, and it is something that we need to think about, because if we create laws without having the vision of all the course of actions that may come out from a certain law that may lead to a bad outcome. Good law will lead to a good outcome, but bad law will lead to a bad outcome. So being sophisticated in the area of creation, not only a law, but understanding of what actions that law can create is essential for well-being. And the connection between the vision of the kingdom and laws is essential, and we lost it. We don't have it. There's government departments, political science departments, and law schools, and they often don't even talk between each other. There are legislative places, and then there are courts and executive offices and all of that separation of powers, but they don't have good communication in areas that would create virtue of happiness and well-being for the whole country. So there is the benefits from separation of powers, but there are also weaknesses, and if they are not remedied by a sense of authority or presence of authority with loving kindness and promoting happiness and good, wonderful relationships between people, that lack of unity may end up being the cause of chaos and destruction. So we have to become very wise on those matters. And I encourage you to develop ways of thinking about the relationships between separations of powers and ways to create unity of direction within a country that creates joy and happiness and positive outcomes. So as we are entering this realm of rethinking of how to create the right ways for our lives, we have to be also very intelligent in thinking about the direction, the way, the course of action, the right decisions that would align with right ways. and right outcomes. So I encourage you to become very creative in this area, and I think that we can bring in tremendous beauty and love to America and then to the whole world. And I think that focusing on understanding methods of our thinking and methods of our actions will actually create exciting outcomes. And it would develop our conversations and linguistic communication and political language. I think that restoration of love of wisdom in politics is one of the ways in which we can achieve this. So I encourage you to do that. I will continue promoting those ideas on my show, sharing with you what I've learned from my backgrounds and educations and from the Spirit of God. And we'll continue this wonderful relationship and beautiful connection, because this is a time in the history of mankind when we can create breakthrough from bad ways in which the earth has been transformed to good ways, and that has to come with the right ways. Thank you so much for listening to those remarks, and see you here next week for another edition of Happiness in the City.